And social media is actually programming the minds of people to actually control their decision making. Therefore, they no longer have the free will, they no longer can make decisions, and therefore it's creating robots, it's creating depression, because when people are things, when people don't actually decide things for themselves, they're dehumanized.
I think we've just suddenly woken up to what we've been doing as parents, allowing them to have smartphones as teenagers, young teens, pre-teens. Most kids have smartphones by the age of 11 when they leave primary school now.
In our case, my wife was very strong, but they didn't have smartphones.
What do they say now about that?
Thank you.
Ultimately, technological solutions or legal solutions are not the whole answer. We need cultural change to make our kids safe and to make us all safe.
The Manor Journey is the catalyst for change in our world. It's a consistent source of truth for the next generation and current leaders. Our mission is to change the world by reframing our current governance, by using ancient wisdom to solve modern problems, and by shaping innovative new businesses to have a culture of pursuit of purpose.
Social media has revolutionised our society. It's changed the way we communicate with our family and our friends. But there is no doubt that not everything about it has been positive. The level of anxiety amongst children, mental health has exploded. Also, the level of political debate appears to have gone down, and not to mention the amount of adverts that are shoved down our throats every single day. Well, we're here to discuss whether social media has a role in the future and how important it should be to our society. I'm joined now by Danny Kruger. He's the Member of Parliament for East Wiltshire, and of course, Philip Ullman, who is a social entrepreneur and the founder of the Manor Journey. So first of all, Philip, to you, is social media making the world a better place?
No, very simply it isn't. To live as human beings, we need to make decisions. Very simple. We know this with our kids. If we start telling our kids, and you've got kids, and if you tell them what to do, they don't like it. They react badly. And social media is actually programming the minds of people to actually control their decision making. Therefore, they no longer have the free will. They no longer can make decisions, and therefore it's creating robots, it's creating depression, because when people are things, when people don't actually decide things for themselves, they're dehumanized.
But Philip, people believe that all they're doing is just looking at photos of their friends, but that's not true, is it?
That isn't true, because it's very subtle. The triggers that are in your mind, go back to advertising before we had social media advertising. So you'd watch a television advert, you'd see, I don't know, a particular brand of breakfast cereal, and you wouldn't realise subliminally it was having an impact on your mind. When you went to the supermarket and you chose a cereal, you would be forced to take that particular cereal, even though you didn't realise it was subliminal. The same thing is happening now, but it's much, much worse because it's programmed to the individual. There's huge amounts of data they have on all of us, and they can change. The way it was described in a film called Social Dilemma is there are almost there are knobs that are being turned by people at the top of Facebook, Twitter, all of these social media channels that actually control elections, control decision-making for procuring goods, and these controlling interests are being sold to bad actors. It's incredibly dangerous and has to go.
Danny, is it as bad as Philip has made out? Because, I look at social media and I think to myself, it is a great communications tool. Presumably for you, as a Member of Parliament, it's brilliant to be able to connect with people in a way that perhaps your predecessor 50 years ago wouldn't have been able to. But there are dangers associated with it as well, aren't there?
Yeah, I mean, in defence of social media, and I don't have much to say in its defence, but I do recognise, yes, it's a very easy way to connect with people. Not everybody's on it, and I think we've built up a much greater resistance to what we receive through digital means. So you might get your message in front of somebody, but there's much less trust. It's an easier relationship, but it's a kind of worse relationship with the public, I think, the politicians have now. However, overall, I think that the effect of social media is harmful. There's always going to be harm in society. And if you remember 30 years ago, when I was growing up, the big sort of moral concern in society was, for young people, was about all sorts of bad behaviour that was going on among young people directly out in the street, from joyriding, massive things, teenage pregnancy, drug use, glue sniffing, antisocial behaviour, fighting, violence. All of that stopped in the early 90s, pretty much. It went off a cliff. And partly we can attribute that to social reform, policy changes, better policing, economy improving. I don't think any of that is really the cause. I think the cause is, at the same time, we invented the internet and people stopped getting in trouble on the streets and they started getting in trouble in their bedrooms. And yes, they weren't causing, the crime rate to go up, but the rate of mental ill health, depression, anxiety, skyrocketed, and we have now a mental health crisis among young people. I think there's a whole bunch of factors going on there. I mean, Jonathan Haidt, the American writer, documented this very clearly, that, just to, partly because of that kind of moral panic that was going on legitimately 30 years ago about the kind of trouble that kids were getting into in the streets, parents became increasingly risk averse about what their children would be up to. So whereas when we were young, you were allowed to, go on your bike and go out all afternoon.
Yes.
That stopped. Children stopped walking to school. They stopped climbing trees. I mean, they stopped doing the things that are kind of risky, and so we stopped them doing that sort of frankly good but risky behaviour, and said, right, stay home because it's safe. And what do you do if you're at home bored as a kid? You just get on the street.
But that raises a really interesting point, and I'll ask Philip about it in a second, because despite the fact that we're slightly different ages, we all had the same upbringing, in the sense that if you were brought home and you were sat in your bedroom, you were walled away from the world, right? So I didn't, if one of my friends from school wanted to phone me, they had to phone me on a landline, which parents could monitor. Now it almost feels like, and I'd be interested in you, not just an MP, but as a parent, it feels like you're not in control of your own home environment anymore, in perhaps the way your parents were.
Yeah, that's totally true. And I think right now, I mean, this year, there's been a marked change in the culture certainly among my friends and peers. I think we've just suddenly woken up to what we've been doing as parents, allowing them to have smartphones as teenagers, young teens, pre-teens. I mean, most kids have smartphones by the age of 11 when they leave primary school now. I think we're all suddenly going, whoa, this is too much. And certainly for us, we've clamped down on it. So certainly no smartphones till they're well into their teens, no phones in the bedrooms. And obviously major limitations on what you can do on your phone.
Yes. How easy is it to do that, by the way?
Yeah, well, I mean, now you're getting, not easy. And, Apple and Android and all the rest of it do their best, I think, to help parents manage. But obviously the kids are much smarter than us. Yes. And they can get around it. And, and also let's not imagine, while I do think we need, as it were, sort of top down, I think we'd need more state control in this area, but we certainly need more parental control, and we need the hardware and the tech companies to do their bit. Ultimately, technological solutions or legal solutions are not the whole answer. We need cultural change to make our kids safe and to make us all safe. And, as parents, you can't rely on the technology to protect you. You have to do it through relationship yourself. And here I am preaching as if I've got this right. I mean, certainly don't. But I do think we need a cultural recognition that it's dangerous for children to be on smartphones. And they themselves, I think, there are lots of surveys showing that kids themselves, as they go through their teens, would have liked to have had more controls put on them when they were younger. Yes. Most children recognise the harm that's being done through social media, girls in particular. And I think we should listen to them and recognise that we do need to be more responsible.
One of the things that worries me is that you have these amazingly wealthy and powerful tech firms, and they go up against ordinary parents, and even somebody who's sophisticated like Danny, who dines out on communications in his job as a member of parliament, still doesn't have the tech savvy to defeat these people. So it becomes incredibly difficult, doesn't it?
Of course it does. And in our case, my wife was very strong, and they didn't have smartphones, and their friends at school did. So we went to comprehensive. The kids went to comprehensive, and they just said no. My wife was strong. I probably wouldn't have been as strong as it happens. My wife was very strong, so they're not going to. And the kids love us for it. They really are grateful.
What do they say now about that?
Thank you. Very simply, they appreciate what we did for them. And at the time, they may not have, but they do now. But it's bigger than this, Danny. It's much, much bigger. The workplace that we live in is pre-programmed. So the key issue, as far as I'm concerned, is that you're not making choices. And you're not making choices when you're a consumer, when you're buying goods in the shops. But in the democracy that we live, the same techniques are applying to voters, focus groups, and then social media advertising, which was used in 2016, and Brexit. Let's not go into detail, but it was used to impact democracy.